minutes of our meeting on the 1st of May as being accurate record of what went on. No, well, we'll do that. Thank you very much for pointing that out to me. So now we move on to item number 5, and it'll be the officers to make a presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. This is Kevin Drain, the Trees Officer for East Cambs District Council. Item 5 is the confirmation of Tree Preservation Order E1223, which was for land adjacent to 103 Broad Street.
I had trouble hearing that, and I'm not sure my colleagues did.
Sorry. So the item 5 is for Tree Preservation Order E1223, which is a confirmation of a tree preservation order at 104 Broad Street, Ely. Behind me, you see the map showing the location of the tree. And so the committee is asked to consider the opinion of local residents who want the TPO confirmed and the objections to the TPO from the neighbouring property owner, including the subsidence claim impact, the amenity value of the tree and the visual impact of its loss in the local landscape. There's a picture of the tree, which I'm sure most of the committee remembers from seeing on site, although it was in leaf now. The tree is a Himalayan birch, and it's visible to neighbouring residents, pedestrians and passing traffic. And it's part of the amenity being the main assessment for serving the preservation order. It was assessed for a TPO based on a requirement for felling through it being in the conservation area.
Okay, well, we haven't got any speakers, so thank you. We haven't got any speakers. I'm having great difficulty hearing.
Oh, okay. Is that better, Chair? Okay, so the objections to the TPO were made by the neighbouring property owner who whose insurance company report identifies the tree as potentially causing cracking to their property. The tree has significant, and they claim that the tree does not have significant amenity value to warrant a TPO. The presence of the TPO will stop repairs to the property from being undertaken, thus devaluing the property, whereas removal of the tree will enhance views of the Bishop's Meadow and a magnolia tree. The tree is not a native, so does not add to biodiversity, and the tree has damaged the adjacent footpath. Previous pruning works to the tree did not result in a TPO because the tree didn't have high amenity. I've answered those questions in the report, which I'm sure you've all consumed. So the members are asked to consider and weigh up the local residents' support for the TPO to be confirmed and the owner's objections to the TPO. It's the officer's opinion that the tree has sufficient public amenity to warrant its protection, and the information supporting the tree's removal is currently insufficient, as explained in the report. A democratic decision is sought as to whether to confirm the TPO and support the protection of the Himalayan birch, and the TPO will require neighbours or the owner to apply for the council for permission to work on the tree and agree appropriate reasonable works to the trees. The committee is recommended to consider the residents' the trees officer's opinion that the trees requires protection. If you decide to confirm the TPO, sorry, I've completely lost my thought on this thing. Yeah. The decision to confirm the TPO if they agree with the residents and the trees officer supporting the amenity value of the tree as listed in the schedule. Council can, if the TPO is confirmed, the council consider future tree work applications and improve suitable tree work specifications for the management of the tree, or refuse an application if the proposed works is not reasonable and appropriate. This would include the removal of the tree if further evidence comes to light that confirms the tree is the cause of the subsidence. If the tree is not, if the TPO is not confirmed, the tree could be removed and the council can do nothing about it. Thank you, Chair.
Members, questions for the tree officer? There you go.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question, really, in regards to the insurance company providing reports for the tree causing structural damage to the property. Have they provided that report to yourselves? And if so, what evidence is laid out in the reports? Thank you.
As was in the officer's report produced, they provided information as part of their application to remove the tree. I questioned some of the comments on it and received no information. They had done some level monitoring, assessing how the tree had moved at different times of the year, and it didn't quite line up with tree-related movement of the property. So I asked for further clarification. It wasn't received, so I was left with the option of serving a TPO or allowing it to be removed.
Thank you.
Any more questions, members, for the tree officer? Councillor Trapp, of course.
Thank you very much. Just to confirm, the roots do go sideways, do they?
Tree roots are generally within the top metre of soil and go spread out laterally, and that's for all trees unless it's incredibly sandy or rocky soil, as there isn't oxygen for their survival at deep depth.
And would those tree roots go to the foundations? What do they stop before the foundations?
They would probably extend as far as the structure of the building, but unlikely to go underneath it due to the lack of nutrients and oxygen.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions? No? Okay, well, we'll now move on to the debate. So, members. Well, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. As far as I'm concerned, particularly as if proof comes forward that the tree is causing damage, any decision on the future of the tree, so to speak, would be reconsidered. I'm perfectly happy that we confirm the TPO. I think it's a lovely tree.
Yes. Oh, Councillor Wilson.
I'd like to support that. I think it's a particularly attractive tree, and it would be a pity to lose it in Ely, where we don't have very many trees anyway.
So am I assuming you're seconding Councillor Brown's? Okay. And we have Councillor Huffer.
I'm in complete agreement with Councillors Brown and Wilson. It's a beautiful tree, and the removal of it, I think, would be detrimental to the street scene. And I think trees of that beauty you don't see very often in Ely, and I think they should be left alone. Thank you, Chair.
Members, have we got anybody who's rowing against the tide? No. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Trapp. It's always a pleasure to have you in the committee. On the while we were visiting this morning, the tree officer did give us the assurance, as Councillor Brown has picked off, that should there be any evidence coming forward of doing damage to the houses or whatever, clearly it would be, the matter would be reviewed again. So on that one, I'll be prepared to give Councillor Brown and Councillor Wilson my backing. So I intend now, unless anybody's got anything they want to say, to go to the vote. Those in favour of, I haven't finished yet, those in favour of agreeing with the tree officer's recommendations, please raise their hands. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much. And if you wish to go, you may go straight away. Okay, we now move on to Mearside Works, and Senior Planning Officer will take us through it and make a presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Before we begin, I just want to draw members' attention to the update sheet that was circulated. We also had another update this morning from another neighbouring property, just reiterating previous objections to the application regarding parking, traffic. I believe that was all from the one this morning. The previous update sheet also outlined objections from another neighbour, again, who had already written in objecting to the application, reiterating concerns regarding flooding and trees and overlooking. We also received a late representation from Surham Town Council who wished to clarify that their comments should be contained within the planning officer report, so to draw members' attention to that. Just to be clear, I'm sure members have read it in my officer report, but not all consultation responses are included in the officer report, as some of them related to previous revisions. So the consultee comments relating only to the current proposal in front of you today are contained within the officer report. So agenda item 6 is for the construction of 91 dwellings, including a ground floor commercial unit for Class E use. And associated infrastructure, including the access and on-site children's play area. This is at 25 Mearside, Selwyn. So the above map shows the outline of the site in red, and as discussed this morning on site, the application site does form a significant portion of the wider allocation within the local plan for SO2. So the aerial image there shows the train station to the south of the site that we saw on site this morning, and then the Viva Arts Centre to the north. I've just included the yellow mapping on the overlay there, just to indicate a small portion of the allocation site. That yellow is included within the allocation, within the local plan, but it's not included within this proposal, as that's within a different ownership. And just to note on that, as we mentioned on site this morning, there is a current outline application on that parcel, on that yellow parcel of land for the construction of 3 dwelling houses. That's currently pending determination. So as said, the proposal includes the provision of 91 dwellings. This would comprise 63 houses and 28 flats. There's a commercial unit for Class E use at the ground floor of one of the apartment buildings, access of Mearside parking spaces and associated infrastructure. The application has undergone a series of amendments through its lifetime. It started with a proposal for 108 dwellings and a larger commercial unit that would measure 163 square metres. There's, as I mentioned, there's four key blocks of apartment buildings which would contain the flats. These are located to the northwestern side of the site, with Block D located to the south and Block E located to the southwest, nearer the station. These are some images that you would have seen on site this morning with the access off Mearside and then wider views of the site from the train station looking north. So the main considerations of the principle of development: market housing mix, affordable housing, design character and density, residential amenity, highways, historic environment, biodiversity and trees, flood risk and drainage, infrastructure in Section 106, and any other matters. So the site is within the development framework and allocated under SO2 for a housing-led and mixed-use development. So locationally, it is acceptable in principle. However, the requirements of SO2 I've listed on this slide. I appreciate you can't see it in too much detail, but this is just to highlight some areas of conflict with the wider allocation in terms of what the policy calls for specifically. So whilst it's acceptable locationally, the proposal does not include an appropriate supply of public open space, landscaping, orientation of buildings, which is elaborated on further on in this presentation, and no industrial uses are proposed. So these limitations of the scheme are contrary to some of the allocation criteria there as highlighted in red. In terms of market housing mix, this is weighted predominantly to 2-bedroom properties, which makes up 56% of the mix, and 3-bedroom properties, which makes up 40% of the mix. It is tilted towards 2- and 3-bedroom properties. However, the strategic housing market assessment does say that we should be flexible to have regards to the nature of the site in the area, and this should be reflective of need. Given the size of the site and the contextual arrangement around Mearside itself, the mix is considered to be appropriate. And also in policy how 1, there is a suggestion that there's a need for more 2- and 3-bedroom dwellings. So the market housing mix is considered acceptable. In terms of affordable housing, our policy directs us to deliver a minimum of 30% affordable housing for development in Soham. Notwithstanding that requirement, we have also undertaken a viability assessment information report dated April 2019 for East Cambridgeshire, which concluded that on a strategic basis, sites in Soham might be unlikely to deliver the full 30%, so 20% affordable housing may be more viable. The information available to the council as of May 2024 indicates that there's currently 281 applicants on the housing register with a local connection to Soham. Of the 91 units proposed here, the applicant includes 12 affordable houses, which equates to 13% of the total units of the site, so 13% affordable housing across the site. This is broken down into a mix of 75% for shared ownership and 75% affordable rent, and 25% shared ownership. This is in broad accordance with our SHMA, which recommends 77% rented and 23% to be shared ownership. So in terms of tenure and mix, we're quite happy with what's proposed here, as the housing officer has also confirmed that the size of the units are appropriate given the need on the register at the moment. Whilst we're happy with the mix and the tenure, obviously this is only a 13% proposed for affordable housing, which is a significant shortfall below the requirements of the policy and our viability assessment by 17% or 7% of the 30 and 20%. So the application is therefore contrary to the local plan with regards to affordable housing. With regards to design character and density, specifically looking at density, the scheme's not considered to be overly dense, looking at 35 dwellings per hectare. And this wouldn't usually or typically give any undue concerns. However, as detailed later on in this presentation and in my committee report, there are constraints of the site, which mean that infrastructure is confined to certain areas within the site itself. So it does give for a higher density feel to the proposal. This means that general placemaking principles are limited, so there's reduced street landscaping and green corridors within the site. Looking at some of the elevations, which I held up on site for you earlier, on the slides there, you can see the apartment block buildings, and I've sort of put arrows to those on the site. So these buildings are considered to lack high quality features or be high quality gateway buildings. Typically you'd expect a transition between the station gateway and the residential development itself. Instead, these are considered to be quite dominant and bulky buildings. As you can see on block E, closest to the railway station to the north, the elevations do not provide attractive or active frontages that you would expect to soften pedestrian routes through the site. Additionally, on blocks B and C, these have had to be designed in such a way to ensure that any openable windows are on their rear elevations and not fronting that elevation along the railway line, where there is a public walk-through. This is to mitigate noise, as mentioned earlier. However, it does result in quite an unattractive appearance along the public realm there. For layout and character, more generally within the site, terminating views are met with turning heads and parking courts. There's no visual interest or landmark features to help navigate through the development. Buildings on corner plots don't provide active frontages to the streets. There's no clear parking strategy throughout the site, and the vast extent of shared surface means that there's a lot of frontage parking, and the proximity of turning heads to the boundaries limits the landscaping. Looking towards residential amenity, we have obviously considered amenity to existing occupiers along Mearside. Specifically, numbers 13 and 15 Mearside are closest to the development with regards to plots 26 and 28. However, the minimum depth of the gardens of those plots are 13.8 metres away from the boundary, which would be sufficient to overcome any significant overlooking or overbearing concerns. There would obviously be a change in outlook and increased noise and traffic, but this isn't considered to be significant given its location next to the station. So more generally, on existing occupiers, residential amenity is considered to be acceptable, subject to conditions. With regards to future occupiers, I've provided a zoomed in plan there. I've highlighted with the blue plots, the plots that we consider to have negative impacts. So there's a staggered arrangement that you can see there within this central core. And the elevations because of the staggered arrangement, the elevations would be abutting gardens, meaning that those gardens would feel significantly oppressed, and that future occupiers would feel an overbearing impact from those adjacent dwellings. Also, some of those gardens, the plots are located to the south, so they would be overshadowed for a significant portion of the day, particularly the ones that I've highlighted in blue. I should also note that there is a discrepancy on the plans. So the elevational drawings for some of the plans show full height windows in the side elevations at first floor, which would provide direct looking into garden space of the adjacent plots. This isn't shown on the floor plans, but is shown on the elevation, so we have taken the worst case situation. More on residential amenity, this is block D that you can see the north elevation of. This would be abutting plot 1, and there would be a separation distance of 1.8 metres. That plot, block D itself measures between 10 metres and 10.7 metres, so this is considered a significantly poor outlook. Future occupiers would feel oppressed by this building, and obviously there'll be significant overbearing impacts, not just on plot 1, but also plot 2, which is located just 8 metres away also. With regards to gardens, for the apartment buildings, blocks B and C would both have access to communal gardens, which is considered an acceptable arrangement and not untypical for flatted development. However, blocks D and block E would have no external garden space at all. They wouldn't have any balconies, and so they wouldn't have access to any private amenity space. This is considered unacceptable in terms of future occupiers' amenity. In terms of noise, we witnessed firsthand the train going by at the railway station earlier today. There has been a noise report submitted and proposed mitigation. So the two noise sources are traffic from Mearside Road itself and the trains from the adjacent train station. It's proposed a 20-metre noise buffer between the railway line and any development to help mitigate this. And then within the dwellings themselves, they'd be orientated in such a way that the windows would be either non-openable on the affected elevation, a secondary window, and therefore can be fixed shut, or don't have any habitable rooms with those windows. So in all situations, there can be a situation where we result in fixing windows shut, and they'd still be able to enjoy access to outside by opening the window on other elevations. However, for plots 37, 38 and 39, these are located to the front of the site, adjacent to the access that we were looking at earlier. These do, again, there's discrepancies on the plans. So it appears as though these rooms would be habitable rooms and would only have one primary window. So they would have to open their window. Assuming an open position, these would slightly exceed the noise targets, only by a maximum of 3 decibels. Given the contextual arrangement of other dwellings along Mere sides, this isn't considered to be an uncommon feature, and it's also not an excessive exceedance above the target. So on balance, considering it's only for 3 plots, it would be an acceptable situation to those plots. With regards to highways, as noted, there is an extensive amount of shared surface within the site. These wouldn't be conducive to low traffic flows or speeds and could result in conflict with pedestrians. Highways have confirmed that they would not be looking to adopt the internal roads as they do not meet their requirements for shared surface spaces. There's wider issues within the site as well in terms of visibility displays and traffic calming features that would be constructed across parking areas. This would cause confusion between road users and pedestrians and could result in significant highway safety concerns within the site itself. With regards to parking, the proposal includes 2 parking spaces per house and 1.5 per flat. There's 1 visitor parking space per 4 residential units. The argument's been advanced that this would be reflective of the location next to the station. And we do hold weight with regards to the fact that the flats would be providing 1.5 spaces per flat, and its arrangement next to the station. However, in the current proposals, there would be an under delivery on 14 parking spaces. We appreciate there might be a lower parking demand for those occupants. However, given the concerns with regards to the safety on the streets themselves, any additional parking could also result in further exacerbation of those issues. With regards to biodiversity and trees, all trees internally within the site are proposed for removal and only the ones to the perimeter are proposed for retention. We don't have specifics in terms of quantum or species within the groups of trees, so we can't provide an accurate indication on mitigation planting required specifically. This is expected to be a minimum of 50 trees. However, that's not including those groups that we have no numbers for. There's considered to be insufficient mitigation planting and lack of landscaping within the site more generally, which would contribute to a poor quality development and public realm. For biodiversity, it would result in a net loss of biodiversity. However, the applicant is proposing to offset this with 6.56 biodiversity units that would likely be delivered at Lower Valley Farm in South Cambridgeshire. They have explored options within East Cambridgeshire. However, it just proves that this is a more suitable arrangement. The Wildlife Trust have confirmed that this is considered to be a suitable alternative, as it's highlighted within the priority areas for Natural Cambridgeshire. Notwithstanding the fact that they would be offsetting their biodiversity net gain provision, overall the loss of trees on site would also result in loss to biodiversity more generally, and so we have concerns with regards to biodiversity, with regards to trees and landscaping, sorry. Flood risk and drainage, there's been no objections from any statutory consultees. The Anglian Water have confirmed that Soham Water Recycling Centre does have capacity for the flows and have seen a suitable drainage strategy. Conditions have been requested to ensure compliance with the flood risk assessment drainage strategy and then further detailed design of surface water drainage and surface water runoff. The southern portion of the site is located within the conservation area. As we saw today, there's some redundant light industrial buildings within the site. So removal of these and replacement of with a residential development would have the opportunity to improve the setting within the conservation area, notwithstanding the concerns we've already raised with regards to design and character more generally. that there could be an opportunity there. So overall, on balance, this is considered to be a neutral impact to the conservation area. For energy and sustainability, a sustainability statement has been included within the proposals, and these set out a range of measures from wastewater management to water efficiency and heating and design. Both of these are considered in compliance with the local plan. I appreciate there's a lot going on there. So just to summarise for members, you're recommended to refuse this application. For the 8 reasons of refusal listed in front of you there, I've just included the broad headings of under delivery of affordable housing, under delivery and poor quality public open space, internal highway safety concerns, failure to create high quality scheme, unacceptable impacts to residential amenity of future occupiers, conflict with the allocation policy, lack of legal agreement, and incorrect and inconsistent plans. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that comprehensive presentation. And we've got speakers, Mr. Richard Conroy and the applicant Neil Pistol. Would you like to come up to the table? You've got 5 minutes between you, and you need to press the switch so the red light comes on. Away at your leisure.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, committee members. My name is Richard Conroy from Total Planning. I'm the planning consultant for this project, whilst this is Neil Pistol. He's the landowner and applicant for the application. Neil just wants to, at the start, just touch base with the sort of background of the site.
Good afternoon. My name is Neil Pistol. Thank you for inviting us to speak. I've been involved with the site since 1978, when my father and I joined in partnership with Ron Bowman, Eric Christian, and Graham King to find a company called Prasad Engineering, which specialized in the manufacture of multi-slide press tools, which the machine we had introduced into the UK. Over the years from 78 to 2012, we had manufactured in excess of 750 tools and supplied them to manufacturing industries within the UK and Europe. Unfortunately, due to relocation of industry to the east and overseas, the company ceased trading in 2012, and we came to the conclusion that we would take the land and allow Ron, Eric, and Graham to retire on the proceeds. We put an application in 2017, and we got approval for 31 developments, 31 houses. I think it's 25 FUM reference. And we then continued on the same view with Barbara Greengrass to develop the further site at the back in the same way as we had been given approval for the front site. I'll hand over to Richard.
Thanks, Neil. So although I want to focus on the planning merits of the proposal, there are some important contextual planning matters that I wish to highlight. This application was received by the council on the 1st of September 2020, and I appreciate we've had COVID and all the impacts that brought and impacted services at local authorities, but this September will be 4 years from the original submission date of this application. Perhaps partially because of COVID, we've had multiple case officers who've each time had their own, who have sought to shape the development in their contradictory ways, unfortunately, causing significant expense to my client. Due to this, my professional view is nobody really got to grips with the constraints of the site, which again may have been partially because of limitations of travel, which could have affected site visits, etc. But it is important to understand that the constraints of this particular site informs the built form. I think this is something that the planning case officer mentioned quite early on today on our presentation. As a result, the development is limited in scope in terms of its variation. Nonetheless, since my involvement from the end of last year, we have submitted 2 further revised schemes, which were referenced as revisions 12 and revisions 13. Despite the council having the latest of these versions, revision 13, since February 2024, and having reconsulted on the scheme internally as late as May 2024, officers have refused to accept these revised schemes. It is clear from the council's online portal that none of these revised schemes were uploaded, and we consider that these schemes address any of the concerns raised here today by officers. Given this application has taken nearly 4 years to be determined, it seems illogical that the council would now refuse to accept the most up-to-date versions of the scheme and instead choose to rush all of a sudden to refuse our application on earlier revisions, revision 11, which was submitted last May. The site is allocated for approximately 90 dwellings in your local plan, and this is not a cap on the number of dwellings, but a guide to what could be delivered. Therefore, the principle of delivering this residential-led scheme is consistent with your adopted policies. There's already extant consent, as Neil said, for 31 dwellings. Council officers have asked us to resubmit a new application. We've accepted to do so. We're submitting an outline application shortly. My applicant, Neil, has worked with the council very closely, and we've allowed Network Rail to use our sites and save them over £250,000 by facilitating the new station development. However, today, what we're primarily asking you to do is to defer the decision on this application until a point that we can consider the new planning application that we're submitting with officers' engagement. Because we feel that the application before you today could prejudice our position, could result in an unnecessary appeal, an appeal that actually, if we were to appeal against, we may lose, but we ultimately could actually win or be awarded some costs. So we feel that it'd be actually much more advantageous to all parties if we were to delay a decision today, defer a decision, carry out a further site visit, perhaps accompanied by ourselves, choose not to make this decision today, allow us the time to negotiate with officers on the new outline application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was a liberal clock-taking exercise. Members, Councillor Akinwale, you go first.
Thank you, Chair. A few questions to ask in regards to your application. In regards to the affordable housing percentages you have in your application, can you justify the reasons why there's a shortfall of 17% according to the HOU3 as well as 13% according to the Council's Viability Assessment Report?
Sorry, as I could answer it as a non-professional, we followed the guidelines given for the application for which we received permission, which gave us 13% affordable housing within the permission. And we followed that guideline and followed also the design parameters that were given at the time for that application.
Yeah, so a financial viability assessment was submitted earlier with the previous application for 31 units. It found that it was unviable to provide anything more than 13%. So the larger application, although it's larger, the viability issues are still the same. And actually, especially since that time, the construction costs have escalated considerably, 20% over the last 2 years. So in viability terms, we haven't carried out a further viability assessment in the last year or two. However, if we were to do so, you'd probably find that the viability is worsened. So although we're providing 13% at the moment, if we were to carry out an up-to-date viability assessment, it would be likely that it would be completely unviable.
Thank you. Next question. In regards to the space standards for affordable housing, can you confirm that it meets the requirements as according to the DCLG?
Yeah, so because this was primarily going to be a private-led development, it was important that these were products that we could sell at the end of the construction period. So we designed most of the properties to be overly large, so they're much larger than the national standards with regards to technical internal space standards.
Thank you. Next question. I know that you have a considerable number of 2 and 3 bedroom properties within the application. That to me says that there will be a lot of young families with a lot of young children as well as teenagers in that area. Can you justify the reason why the public open space is small and comparable to the actual space? It seems to be like a lot of houses are clustered together as though you're trying to get as many houses in that particular area with no justification for that particular cramped space.
Yeah, so that's kind of why I've asked for a deferral for another accompanied site visit, because the constraints of this site, they're very particular. It's an unusual site in many regards. That means that you end up having to deliver more public roadway space to access the full extent of the site. That's because there's water courses that run kind of right down the middle of the site, and there's an acoustics buffer on the other end. As a result, it's not that we're delivering a smaller proportion of public open space, it's because we've had to deliver a higher proportion of roadway on the site overall, which means that the amount of space left over for actual built form development or potential development is less than you'd usually expect. But it is a difficult site to develop, and I think that's been some of the issues that we've had in the past when we've been trying to engage with officers. But more recently, things have been improving, and I know we're hopefully heading in a better direction more recently.
Thank you. In regards to the public open space, and that is on the application side. So are you saying there's no way to increase that space? And also in regards to the play area that is actual in the actual area, what are your plans in that development? What do you plan to build on that particular open space?
We've addressed the issues that you have mentioned in design iteration 12 and 13, plus the new application outline that we submitted as well to the council. The problem is that there is a gas main running through the site. There are two water courses going through the site, one from the south, which runs south to north, and the one in the middle, which goes from north to south. The problem is that there is also a requirement for a man-made flood mitigation area to hold 1.5 million gallons of water within the site if in case some load overflows. So in a certain way, we are restricted to, along with the noise buffer, to linear development to take into account the segregation of the gas main, the protection of the water course for flood mitigation, and the provision of an attractive walkway from the station to the Viva Arts Centre.
Thank you. So you trying,
Councillor,
sorry, okay.
Councillor, you're invited to have one question.
Okay. I did say a couple of
If you
questions.
can make a very quick one.
Okay, so you're just trying to say basically, in regards to the public, there's no way for you to obviously expand the space. And I'm assuming in regards, because what I'm trying to lay out here is the provision of inclusive play areas for young children and young people and children with disabilities, for instance, and sensory needs. So you're trying to say there's no way to improve that space and also make that space inclusive for this category of people?
No, we're not saying that. We're saying the later iterations we have presented address those concerns. The particular iteration that you are looking at was a draft of a discussion paper from a meeting that was held in September in these council offices. And we were asked to provide some documentation for a discussion to take place. We did that. The discussion never took place, and that was accepted as our application when it really wasn't. So what's happening here is that we have an application that's being put forward, which is not what we want to put forward. This is not the plan we would wish to propose, but we are forced by the council not accepting our later discussions. We have to sit here and defend it. And we're asking, because of that, for a deferral until the latest applications, which address all the concerns you're making, can be agreed with the officers and be put forward to one of the next meetings of this council.
Thank you.
We've built up a list. Councillor Trapp.
Thank you very much. And notice actually, I was going to ask you about the revisions, but obviously we want to see those because you have revised the plan. But the one concern I have from this one, and maybe it might be addressed in the revisions, which we haven't seen, is that I noticed an awful lot of parking away from dwellings, and how we're going to provide, as we should do now, electric charging.
The electric charging points could have been secured by condition, first of all, and I think we would have been satisfied providing a significant proportion of electric parking or charging points. Coming back just on the public open space, it is important to point out as well that actually it's not always the quantity of public open space that's important, it's the quality as well. And I think there was enough space on even this previous revision to accommodate sufficient lap space, children's play space, and the likes for the development of this size. This is right beside a station. It's a highly sustainable location, and national policy supports making the most efficient use of these sites. So it's really important that we do so. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Concerning electric charging points, they should be actually attached to each dwelling rather than having a point for which people get charged, because it's actually much quicker, much easier, less fraught with difficulty for the inhabitants if they don't have to share a electric charging point. It is quite dense compared to, I noticed, the surrounding houses. It is dense, yeah. I was also going to ask you, and something happened the officer was talking about, was provision of light industrial, maybe particularly actually with the railway being adjacent to it, it might be worth having, and where noise may be less intrusive, is for some very small workshops, sort of garage-sized things, for development. Have you ever thought of that as well, for provision of local industry?
It has been considered, but I think what you need to consider as well is that the site's allocated, and we have to be consistent with that allocation, which I don't believe industrial use may be necessarily consistent with that approach. Also, we've been encouraged in the past to only have one vehicular access into the site from Mearside. So if we were to provide any industrial space at the back along the railway side, we would end up having the road network having to accommodate larger commercial vehicles through the residential development in order to approach those workshops or industrial uses.
I was thinking of not large commercial vehicles, but white vans, you know. But thank you very much.
We actually had considered what you had said, and the latest iterations which have been presented show greater commercial use on the station side, fronting the station, ideally with what you suggested, with either the ability to have a larger unit or a number of smaller units, garage size. But we believe it should be on the station side, because that is the easiest access for people to get to market, because there's a railway station there.
The purpose of this little session is for members to ask them simply for some clarification to extra to your presentation, and it's not merely meant to be a general extension to your application. Thank you. And Mr. Councillor Lay.
Yeah, my question was, if we defer this application to look at your new application or to future applications, are you telling me that you will not be able to meet the affordable housing standards, and that the application that's in at the moment, the second application, will only provide 13% of affordable housing? Because it's most important that on all these sites that we achieve between 20 and 30%. And if you can't do that, then I can't see us as a group having this deferred.
Thank you for that question. So Neil's the landowner and the applicant, but there's also another developer involved as well. But I've spoken to both partners, and they have confirmed on the new application that a minimum of 20% affordable housing will be delivered. It's likely to be more than that, but at the moment it's a minimum of 20%. So I can give you that assurance here today.
I'd make just one comment here. We have a rule, and it's 30%, and that's the rule. It's not a negotiating point or a target. It's part of our regulations. Yes, sir.
If I could mention that we are currently in negotiation with the Housing Association to see if we can bring the whole thing through as a housing association development.
I thought I'd just add a bit of clarity to the conversation.
Thank you.
Councillor Huffer.
So are you saying in the later iterations of your 12 and 13, there is more affordable housing? Are the roads of a suitable adopted standard? Because I note here from the waste team that they will not enter the site to collect bins. So you've potentially got 90 odd households dragging their bins up onto Mearside, which would just be utter nonsense, frankly. It would be utter nonsense. So I've seen some badly thought out schemes, but this is really just a bit, and I just not quite sure what to say, to be honest with you, but are the roads going to be of an adoptable standards? And have you also thought, so I'm sneaking a second question in here, Chair, that maybe the way to make this site more palatable to everybody, including those people who are going to be living there? I mean, it says up to 90 dwellings. It doesn't have to be 91. If you produced 60 high quality dwellings on that site, you might have decent affordable space, decent roadways, decent parking. It could just make the whole site more palatable rather than just thinking about how many can we cram into one site. Think about the quality of site that you're providing.
Yeah, thank you. I don't personally feel that we are actually trying to cram as many units into the site as possible. You know, the site allocation, I think, says approximately, it doesn't say up to. And, you know, we have looking at less, but obviously there's the necessity to provide affordable housing. We have to balance that as well. We're looking at now potentially providing 20, 30, maybe even higher percentages of affordable housing. Obviously the council would benefit from that. There's a large housing need here. So potentially we could end up housing, you know, half of your housing need on this one site alone. It's a highly sustainable location next to a station, you know, in the town. It's ideal for making the most efficient use of. So I appreciate that you might have concerns about the density, but even the planning officer said on a density ratio calculation, it's actually not a dense development. It just appears to be dense because
I
of the...
know you've got a lot you want to get off your chest. Please accept the fact I'm being extraordinarily flexible. So,
but one thing I would like you all to take away
just
from
the
this,
one.
no, this is one part that I would like you all to take away from this today is that if you are prepared to defer the application, I know my client is more than prepared to, and the other application is approved in the next number of months. He's more than willing not to appeal this current application and therefore not seek any costs.
Thank you.
I've really had seen here people coming along and saying they really don't like the application they're actually putting forward, which is, I think, what you're saying now. So why don't you just withdraw it and then we'll look at the next one afterwards? Yeah, I think that'd be much simpler. It would save everybody a lot of time and effort if we had it withdrawn now, and then we don't have to spend a long while discussing something which you don't really agree with yourselves and our officers don't agree with either.
There is significant financial cost if we withdraw it. And we're really rather upset that the later iterations that have been presented to the council since May, which addressed all these concerns that you've raised. I mean, we adopted a shared road service because that was what we were encouraged to do with our initial approved application. And as that was approved, we decided to try and continue the theme onto the rest of the site. If we can defer it, it means that it's been put to the side. We can bring forward a scheme which we've already done, which addresses the bin collection, a road system that will be adopted.
Can you answer Councillor Wilson's question, please? This is not a way for you to continue your application.
Okay, so
this is a way for members to just ask strict questions. Yes, no, we can't do that. We can do that.
We can't withdraw because of the financial risks to us. We would like you to defer it so we could.
Well, we'll get through to see if there are any more questions. No. Any more comments from the officer?
If I may, Chair, I'll come in and try and cover off a few of the points which have been raised in these discussions. Just for members' benefit, we did offer for the applicant to withdraw when we corresponded with them ahead of letting them know that this was coming to planning committee. With respect to the comments about the additional plans that were made, we asked them on numerous occasions whether or not they wanted us to reconsult on those plans. We were not given the affirmative, henceforth why we have brought the scheme in front of us. That was the last formally submitted set of plans, which was reconsulted upon. A few other points to raise. There's no requirement by law for us as a council to accept amended plans. Once we get to a certain stage through the application process, we don't normally invite further iterations. Obviously, we have previously on this one, as we're up to iterations for 12, 13, etc. So it's not like we haven't worked with the applicants previously, though I do admit, and we have said this to the applicants, that this hasn't been the perfect relationship going on. So further on, a couple of points raised about viability. As officers, we would normally say that the bigger the site, the more viable it tends to be, because you've got more opportunity within that site to obviously to move things around, to play with height, to play with different layouts. So we would respectfully suggest that we don't consider that what the gentleman said around the viability and provision of affordable housing would stand up to the scrutiny. And as we said before, the reason we haven't rerun the viability assessment is because we don't have a scheme in front of us as officers we can support. So there was no point rerunning the numbers on the scheme that you have in front of us. Bear with me, I made quite a lot of notes, so 1 second. There was mention made of an accompanied site visit. Just to gently remind members, we're not able to do accompanied site visits as per the constitution. We're not, so that would not be appropriate for us to do. They stated that this was only a draft scheme. That's not correct. It was a formally submitted scheme which was reconsulted upon. And for them to say that they won't appeal is not a material consideration, and I would urge members just to disregard that point that was made. Oh, last but not least, sorry. There was a question raised around the wording of what the allocation says, and I can confirm it says provision will be made for up to approximately 90 dwellings. So in essence, everyone was right in a sense, but it does say up to, and there is further on, you'll see on your screen there, it's probably very small, so it's quite hard to read. It does say, however, a minimum of 0.5 hectares of office industrial development should be provided. Clearly, obviously, that's something that we can consider in the round if we think the wider benefits of the scheme outweigh the need to provide that, and obviously members can override that, but it's just something to clarify that the allocation does suggest that we should have some of that use on the site.
We've now got to the stage where there's questions to the planning officer, and that could be directed either to the planning officer or the head of planning, whichever you want. So, one question.
Just one question. Yes, sir. I forgot to ask it before. In regards to the commercial unit, it says 193 parking spaces, but there's no mention of electric points or disabled spaces there. Is there any electric points or spaces for disabled parking? Thank you.
Not that we're aware of. However, usually that sort of fine level of detail will be dealt with at condition stage. So we would be satisfied that there is definitely the room to do those things there. So we could certainly deal with that through condition.
Thank you.
Councillor Lay, just that you.
To Councillor.
Thank you. I just wondered whether or not we'd taken into account any vibrations to those buildings from those trains that run through alongside the applicant's proposal.
Just for clarification, Councillor Lay, so 7.86 within the officer's report covers that point. There was a noise assessment which is carried out as part of the application, And obviously with the mitigation measures and with what's required within the building regs, it was considered that could be adequately mitigated against.
Councillor Trapp, questions to the officers?
Question, you said plural, thank goodness. First of all, the 91 cap, whatever, is that for the whole plot, including the bit that, is that for the whole thing, including the bit that isn't under different ownership?
Yes, that's correct. That would be for the entire allocation.
All right, okay, so if there's an application there from some housing, we shall, this will have to come down then.
These numbers are never hard and fast.
Okay.
So what they are is there's a guidance as to what could potentially be acceptable on a site. What you have to remember is when allocations are drawn up, there is not always an understanding of what constraints are maybe unknown to policy officers when they're drawing up such things. So they're a guide more than anything else. Clearly, if a site is capable to take more, then obviously we will look to take more. But again, it is not a promise that we will reach the numbers that are within that allocation as well.
Okay, but one could take more if there was more affordable housing, shall we say? I mean, is there need for affordable housing of 1 or 2 bedroom flats or whatever it is in Surham, do you think?
I think the simple answer to that is there is need for affordable housing throughout the district.
And smaller housing would be more beneficial.
Yeah, so the need in Surham is circa 280 for affordable housing.
Right. Okay, so but what size is the 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom mix more useful than having 3 or 4 bedrooms?
2 and 3 bedroom is preferable at the moment. The housing register does indicate a need for 1 bedroom properties, but obviously 2 and 3 will cater for that also.
Okay, thank you very much.
And then as we now move on to the debate. So this is up to you to say whatever you want and contribute to the discussion. Oh, Councillor Lay, I just started at your end and Councillor Huffer.
Yeah, just my comments are that I've never seen an application come in front of us where there have been so many areas which the planning officers have rightly brought to our attention regarding this application. We've not had anything come into us before that has been so outside the requirements that are laid down within planning. It just doesn't seem reasonable to me. That's my comments.
Okay, and Councillor Huffer.
Thank you, Chair. I completely agree with Councillor Lay, and I am quite happy to propose that we accept the officer's recommendations for refusal based on the 8 reasons for refusal that the planning officer laid out. My comments about the scheme are, as I have rarely seen a more ill thought out or apparently ill thought out scheme. My thoughts as I stood alongside the railway station today was that I was on the train on Sunday and I noticed that as we're going into central London, you see applications like this. Surham is not central London. It is a small market town and needs to remain looking like a small market town with housing that is sensitively designed to fit in within that scheme, within that area. This is not sensitive to the area at all. And just a few miles down the road where I live in Fordham, they are delivering affordable housing at 30 and 40% on sites that are a lot smaller than this. So they may say there's no viability. Well, other people are managing to deliver high quality, affordable housing units at 30 and 40% with garden spaces, with parking spaces, with areas where bin lorries can go in and collect refuse without having to worry about running people over. You know, if when you work that as the planning manager said, this is up to 90 dwellings. If when you investigate the site, you find a gas main, a water main, various other things, then you reduce the number of units to take into account for that. You don't just reduce the amount of garden space, parking space, green open space, play areas for children, you cut your cloth according to what you actually have to work with, not saying I've got permission for up to 90 houses, it was allocated for up to 90 houses. I don't care what they look like. I don't care if they're little boxes with no garden, no sunlight, no windows that can open, nowhere for children to play. I'm sorry, this is not the way we do things in East Cambs. Thank you, Chair.
I must accept, I agree totally what Councillor Huff has just said. It seems to me we have in front of us a scheme which the officers are recommending to refuse, and that the applicants also think we ought to reject it because they've got some different scheme that they really want to put forward. The whole thing seems to be ridiculous that we're spending time discussing something which nobody actually wants.
Thank you. I shouldn't have to ask it, but did Councillor Huff or Councillor Wilson want to second? Oh, Councillor Huff has proposed it. Councillor Wilson, do you want to second it? Thank you. So I'll just make a note of that. We'll continue the discussion. And we go to Councillor Akinwale.
Thank you. I just wanted to find out, because you mentioned there are particular plans you had in the pipeline. There are financial implications mentioned in regards to the application. So just wondering what would be the consideration if there was a possibility to defer the application? What would be the financial implications to either side of the party?
The first answer to that would be is financial considerations are not a material planning consideration. And secondly, what would be the purpose of deferring?
It does in regards to what the applicants brought forward in terms of their other potential plan.
Councillor, we are actually on a debate section. We've had the questions to the officers. You should have asked everything you wanted to know from the officers. Let's just finish this last question with the officer as a special treat.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, that's it. You've been answered fully. Okay. Anybody else got any comments? Councillor Trapp, it wouldn't be.
I actually hearing what the proposers have to say, I am sorry that they seem to be flexible enough and wanting to deliver something. And I'm sorry that we have had to just consider this proposal and were not able to consider the revisions, such they are. And I think that's unfortunate. I am concerned, particularly as the proposers brought this up, about the water courses running through it. And I'm surprised. I'm not sure if I saw any. I tried to look for lead flood authority, whatever it is, and I couldn't find any comments from them. I may have missed them on rather large paper here, but it does seem that there's. I thought that part. I remember a planning proposal on the other side of Mearside, further down, which was subject to flooding, and we had pictures of lots of flooding there. So I'm slightly concerned about the possibility of flooding here. I haven't seen any report. I may have missed it. Was it a bit? Yeah. So I'm also not sure why.
Councillor Trapp, we have had questions.
This is debate. We're talking about this, and the other thing is I was not sure why there can't be access to station roundabout, which seems to be the most viable thing there, rather than onto Mearside. But that's right. It's there. It's a roundabout. It's only got two things off it. So yeah, I think one can do better than this, and I would be. Well, we're not allowed to defer it, so we have to refuse it.
I think that's everybody has had a say on the debate section. Personally, I think it's a tragedy that we've got to a stage where we're spending a lot of time considering something that's it's gone there. But a huge list of reasons, that each one of them could have been sufficient to turn this application down. I don't know where that problem is. I hope that in the future there'll be a really high level of cooperation between applicants. It seems there's been a breakdown between the applicants and the planning department here, and I think it's not been very positive. I will certainly be supporting Councillor Huffer's suggestion, and and I really did just think when I was listening to Councillor Clapp, I thought, well, this place is called Mearside. I wonder why. Why is it called Mearside? Probably both some water there at some time.
There was a Roman port there.
Don't feel you're kept out of the conversation. Anyway, I think we've got, unless there's anybody else who's got anything to say, I think we're going to go to the vote. We have a proposal from Councillor Huffer, seconded by Councillor Wilson, to agree with the officer's recommendations, as I understand it. That's correct, Councillor Wilson, Councillor. So all those in favour, please raise their hands. Not quite unanimous, is it? That is. Okay. Well, now those who are in favour of the application, please raise their hands. Those who are abstaining, please raise their hands. Well, thank you very much. That has been rejected. Thank you for coming. I want to talk. Members of the public and members of staff and members, the last one may be a long one. Would anyone like to break for just 5 minutes quickly now? Anyone want to? Okay, so we'll break, and by that clock we'll go to about 21 minutes after. So we've got 5 minutes literally if you want. Thank you.
affordable dwellings with associated access, parking and landscape, and all matter reserved except for the means of access, and it's at Cambridge Road, Streatham. This presentation is going to be quite short because it is an update from the April 2024 Planning Committee. As usual, this is the red line, is the application site, and you can see on the right-hand side, left-hand side, as you'll see, the access at the site along the A10. This is the application site. It's indicative layout, so you can see how the houses, open space could fit in within that site, as well as how it accesses onto the A10. Proposed development is a rural affordable housing exception site for the up to 83 dwellings. It's all affordable housing. The developer is seeking to provide a community orchard and on-site play space. It'll have on-site SUDs, and still it would have off-site highway mitigation works. So on all of these elements, there are no change to what was presented at Planning Committee in April, and I'll come on to the changes later from the independent report. Just to confirm, because it's been asked, the local connection requirements, those needing affordable housing in Streatham, is 46 dwellings. In Little Thetford, it's 21 affordable dwellings, and the other nearby village, Wilburton, is 38 affordable dwellings needed. Just to remind members of the planning history, there are two previously approved schemes for 19 and 38 dwellings, and those are the indicative layouts for those schemes. The current proposal is for 83 dwellings, and it extends further westwards into the countryside, away from the A10. As I said before, this is an update to Planning Committee following the April 2024 Planning Committee. The other material considerations are detailed in Appendix 1, and the focus of this is following the independent highways report, having now been received, is just to update members on the highway safety and transport impacts following this independent report. Members have, I'm sure have already read this in detail in Appendix 2, which is the independent standard report we went out to get to consider highway safety issues. I won't go through all of these elements, but the ones members might want to focus on is point 1, the approach site access has been designed to the appropriate design standards. And then 7, that the level of pedestrian trips has been underestimated in their view. Point 8, that Stantec believe that the guidance reviewed in this report would appear to suggest a controlled crossing is more suitable in this location given local factors. And 9, that the footpath improvements need to be made better in order to deal with fear and intimidation from the A10 traffic. These are Stantec's recommendations. While some of them are very much within the public highway and would be very much the highways authorities bit, like keep clear road markings, the ones I would particularly want to raise to members are points 4 and 5 here, which is Stantec suggesting that additional discussions are held between us, developer and local highways authority in regards to creating a standalone controlled crossing, and that the footpath provision is reviewed in order to better deal with the fear and intimidation from the A10. It's on this basis that it's officers' view that a control crossing over 10 and footpath improvements are highly recommended. It is also on this basis that I would advise members to further defer this application in order to allow these recommendations to be explored, because obviously it's going to require road safety audits and work between the developer and the highways authority with us being involved. And then we'll come back later on when that is all sorted, or when it's proven it can't work for whatever reason. Developer has just confirmed developer has agreed to work with the LPA and the local highways authority to design and provide those changes. Developer has also provided it an alternative sketch which illustrates a proposed event on site. This hasn't gone out for consultation, but I believe the developer is showing that play areas and orchard can be moved around, and shows that different layouts could potentially work on this site, come a future reserve matter application if it was approved. Just to confirm then, the recommendation to members is to defer the application in order to allow for the submission and consultation on alternative highways improvements, which is point A, and then to bring it back to planning committee within a 6-month period of time. And then B is if this does not happen, basically. And therefore, recommendation to members is to defer this application again in order to allow the highway improvements to be sorted, and then just bring it back to committee on that basis. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have a speaker here, an agent on behalf of applicant. Yes?
Can I just make a point of clarification to members just on what we are recommending that they do today, so that we are able to, obviously, if members are minded to go with the officer's recommendation of deferral, what we are asking members to do today is to consider all other material considerations on the site. Because if you're not happy with the site in principle, there is very little point in us taking forward those discussions and obviously wasting the applicant's time and money, and obviously the council's time and money. So I just wanted to clarify, obviously that's for obvious reasons, that's not contained within the wording of the recommendation, but I think it's a useful clarification point as to how to guide your discussions today. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Oh, you're very ready. You've got 5 minutes. Please press the red button and away you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Committee. My name is Chris Frost, and I'm the agent for this application. The application before you seeks approval for 83 affordable homes and follows a previous approval for 38 similar homes on broadly the same site. The scheme is brought forward in association with Stonewater Housing Group, a registered social housing provider who will be developing out the site. The application was deferred at Planning Committee in April for a third-party review of the transport and access matters relating to the scheme, which has now been undertaken by transport consultant Stantec. We did speak to officers following receipt of that. We wanted to make some further changes and sort of deal with the points that have been raised before coming back to committee. But officers' view was that the instructions from committee last time round had been just to get that report, not to entertain any further discussions, and just to come back and report it back to you at this point in time. Now, we're pleased to note that the Stantec report makes no fundamental concerns in respect of the transport and access elements of the scheme, and makes 5 recommendations, including suggesting that there's further opportunity for discussions with the County Highways Authority in respect of the signalised crossing. They raise a query regarding land ownership within the visibility splay, which the County Highways have already confirmed will be adopted as highways land under a section 228 agreement. And Stantec have also raised points in relation to the detailed design of the junction and the access related to footway widening, street lighting and road markings, which have already been discussed with the County Highways Authority and will be advanced as part of the section 278 agreement, the highway works, for the scheme that's already been approved. Now, we've raised concerns with your officers about the accuracy of their brief to you on the conclusion of the Stantec report, and had asked them to make clear that the Stantec report does not conclude that the current highway scheme is unacceptable in terms of either highway safety or pedestrian safety. Their recommendations are just recommendations, and they do not state that the application could or should be refused on highway grounds. The County Highways Authority have also reviewed the Stantec report and remain of the view that the proposals are acceptable in their current form. Indeed, they've gone even further to explicitly advise your officers that they wouldn't want to try to defend a request for a crossing at appeal, and in such a scenario, they'd be very concerned about a costs award on grounds of unreasonableness. This response from the Highways Authority is in your update pack. However, Stonewater are keen to explore the option of the signalised crossing, and our initial discussion with the Highways Authority suggests that they would probably accept one now. They were reluctant to support a signalised crossing in our earlier discussions. They preferred a central refuge island, which is what was shown on the scheme, because they feel that it has less impact on traffic flow. But they've now indicated that they would consider one as part of the proposal. Consequently, we're completing the detailed design of a signalised crossing, which will then be subject to a road safety audit and sent to the county highways for assessment. If the county highways engineers will accept the crossing, then I confirm that we will formally amend the scheme to include it. We're also happy to accommodate the other 4 recommendations of the Stantec report. The recommendations are not extensive, and we do not believe that anything close to the suggested 6-month extension will be necessary to address the points raised. We currently have an extension of time agreed to the 12th of August, and we anticipate being able to address and resolve these highway issues in time for the August Planning Committee. We note that there are no objections to the proposals from statutory consultees, and that the application has received significant support from local residents, including 70 letters from people who wish to support affordable housing in the area. And to conclude, while the existing transport and access arrangements have been confirmed to be acceptable, we're happy to work with your officers and county highways to see if an acceptable signalised crossing can be devised, and we will endeavour to get back to you on this as quickly as possible. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly agree that we need a signalised crossing, because there's, you know, living very close by, I know perfectly well that that is a very fast moving traffic road, and traffic will stop if they got a red traffic light, but probably for no other reason. Can you explain exactly where it is? Because I'm not quite sure exactly where this crossing would actually be on the map, because someone just pointed out.
Which is more of a detailed design drawing, which shows the detailed design of that there. So the pedestrian crossing would be to the north of what is the new access into the site, but south of Short Lane.
Right. If I may follow that up.
Yes.
Of
course, Councillor Wilson, if I may just say something, it's about halfway between the garage and the roundabout. If that helps you.
The garage and the round.
Sorry, no. That point there, yes.
Yeah, right. Okay, and that's sensible, because that's where people want to cross. The only other problem that I see on this thing is people coming out of your development and trying to turn right, which is I mean, I hate that crossing further up. It's just awful to try and turn against the traffic across 2 lanes. So perhaps there should be a sign saying turn left, and they have to go up to the roundabout and come back again.
There have been quite a lot of detailed discussions with the Highways Authority as to what they will and won't accept in terms of these elements. So they've looked also at the possibility of a right turn lane moving into the site and discounted that. They didn't want that. They are happy with based on the traffic data that we have at the moment, that right turns out of the site will be achievable, acceptable. It could probably be made a little bit easier if there's a pedestrianised crossing in there as part of that as well. Again, we're very happy to work with the Highways Authority, but we are guided by the Highways Authority. We can't propose anything that they won't accept.
I think it might be wise if you finish what you were going to say, because I think we cut you short.
I didn't ask for questions.
You're okay. All right, okay. Well, then we go down to Councillor Lay.
Yes, where the crossing is going to go in further to the north, what are they going to do about the restriction of the width of the road at that location? Because, sorry, did you say something? No, because the road, you know, for an A road, it's quite a narrow road for an A road through that location. And if you're going to put an island in the middle of the road, it's probably going to restrict the traffic either side.
if I answer, with a signalised crossing, you wouldn't need an island in the middle of the road.
Okay.
You would cross directly from one side to the other.
Okay,
So yes, so it wouldn't be a two-stage cross.
okay. And the second part of my question is, how do you think you're going to get a response from the county council in 6 weeks when it takes us 6 months?
But they have been reasonably responsive on this so far, and the response that they've given to your offices has been reasonably quick. I think we're quite a long way down the detailed design of this now, and hopefully we'll get a response before too long.
Councillor Huffer.
Thank you, Chair. You'll have to forgive our cynicism. As a planning committee, we struggle with county highways. And all I can say to you is that most of us were absolutely fine with the site, a slight issue with where the play area was, but I think all of us were really concerned about how mothers with small children, and they talk about 28 school-age children. That doesn't mention the siblings in the buggy, or not quite old enough, they're preschool, so they're on a scooter, how they were going to get across the A10 with any degree of safety. So all I can say to you is the county council will fight you tooth and nail over this, because that's what they do, and they've never yet come and sat in front of us in the way that you are to justify what they say. And I look at some of these figures and I just no idea where they get them from. So all I can say to her, can I beg you to hold fast and make sure that you get that lighted crossing, because children's lives will depend on it, frankly.
Thank you, Councillor. I mean, yes, we will. As I say, we're committed to do it. We are very happy to do everything we can to bring that crossing in, but I cannot sit here today and guarantee that we'll be able to do it, because it's down to whether the Highways Authority will accept it.
Councillor Ecclehurley.
Thank you, Chair. In addition to the signal crossing on that road, would it be possible to also put forward a proposal to include speed cameras on that road, just for the sake of the fact that even though there's signalized crossing on that road, some people would definitely continue to still go past the limit. So is that something that you consider, speed cameras on that road, just for the fact of the lapse of young kids and teenagers that will be crossing that road as well?
I don't think that is within our gift. I don't think that we as developers would be able to put forward a proposal and expect the Highways Authority to accept it. However, if a signalised crossing is accepted and goes in, it would probably require some other speed calming measures as part of it, including they have sort of gateway entrance signs as you come into the village from the south, and potentially other road markings and other things which is intended to slow traffic and let them know that there's likely to be a crossing point coming up. So I would expect that to be included as part of a wider scheme.
Thank you. Second question. In regards to the play area, can you talk me through what you plan to put into that play area, please? Thank you.
I'm going to be perfectly honest, that it hasn't been designed at this point in time. It's an outline application with means of access only. I think we gave an indicative position for it at that time, but it's usually a sort of a local area for play for younger children. Obviously, there is a larger play area just across the road in Streatham, which has its own play facilities for younger and older children.
So will you consider facilities for children and young people with SEND needs?
Again, we haven't got the detailed design of it, but we're happy to look at anything that's required. There will be a detailed condition on the planning permission, which we'll need to submit the information for.
Thank you.
Councillor Clapp.
Thank you very much. I noticed a bit of reluctance on your part there, Chair. I'm delighted you're pursuing this application for affordable housing, and it's great that it's happening. Actually, could you remind me what the speed limit is on that road? It is 40 miles an hour. Okay. In respect of your answer about the safety cameras, that is within the province of the parish council putting forward a bid. So it might actually developer going along and saying, I will pay for a speed camera, might actually help the parish council. if were they so minded as to have one? I'm just offering this to you.
I'm afraid that's not a guarantee that I can give at this stage, but obviously with affordable housing coming forward in the village, it's there are sort of other benefits that we are able to provide.
Thank you very.
I'd just like to ask you something. You referred to about 70, I think you said, letters from local people in support of this.
Yes, I think there were 70 comments, I think, in support of affordable housing, yes.
Are you aware that almost all of those have the same email address? And are you aware that they're virtually the same letters from every source? And are you aware that they come from as far away as 20 miles away?
I know, yes, I know how they were collected. They are not the same letters, they're not from the same.
No, the last paragraph is always subtly changed.
No, we've had to use, it's very difficult to get people to engage on applications, particularly for affordable housing, to reach out to the people who deal with the most. And one way of doing that is to reach out through social media and try and attract people who would otherwise not perhaps read local papers or read local news. And one of the ways of doing that is through social media. So we've used a media company who engage with people, talk to them about issues and invite them to make comments. The comments are not made up by anyone other than the people who are putting forward those comments, but they're done via a single channel.
You could see that. I didn't know that the members here were aware.
Right.
But they all seem to come, not all, most seem to come from the same just build more homes. And
yes.
In many cases, the first two paragraphs were the same, and then there was an individual one at the end. And I thought, and the local ones from the village were against it.
There was some against it and some for it as well. That
and the parish council was against it.
The parish council.
You're right, okay. And when you looked at the need for this social housing, Little Thetford has been joined to Streatham because the need in Little Thetford is 21 and in Streatham it's 46. So your housing development would have almost double the amount that were needed in the village. And are you aware that there isn't even a footpath that goes between Little Thetford and Streatham?
I am aware of that, yes. I mean, at the time when we did the housing needs assessment, it was commissioned in discussion with your housing officers. At that time, there was a large proposal for a scheme in Wilburton, which included a significant proportion of affordable housing. So when we were speaking to your housing officers about where we should look in terms of assessing housing needs, those were the two closest villages which were suggested to us. So that's where we've done it. I think the officer mentioned that there's a housing need in Wilburton as well, which is in addition to the ones that are identified in the housing needs assessment for Thetford and Streatham.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for the applicant? No. Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, as I think it's already been mentioned, speed cameras aren't in our control or developers' control. Certain, I would imagine, additional road safety measures might come up in the road safety audit in order to make this work. So that might be additional, I don't know, signals, crossings, signs, etc. Play areas design will come forward at the reserve matters stage. This is only outline of access being agreed, so there's still a lot more. And as I said before, developer can move around where the play space is located. It's one location, and members will note on this one, it's moved closer to the A10 so that it can move around accordingly at the reserve matter stage. And the final bit I think I need to mention is obviously, as officers, our recommendation is always based upon the quality of arguments put to us, not the quantum. So we've considered the need of affordable housing in the village, not who's just written in, so to speak. I think that covers all the issues I need to mention. Anything else?
Sorry, there's one thing I wanted to add to that, because obviously there's mention made of the application in Wilburton. Just to clarify, that application is no longer being progressed and is not on the council's books. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If by the worst events, the highways refuse to put this crossing in, could we have them come to the next meeting and suggest why they are against it? Because this is very, very strong, because we as a committee asked them last time to come.
The simple answer is no, we cannot force them kicking and screaming to come to a planning committee. However, that does not mean that we cannot place pressure on them, either that being through political channels or via the chief executive. So if that is something the members are insisting on, and I'll say with a proviso, should they not play ball and come to an agreement around the crossing, then certainly that is something we as officers can ask to be done. Obviously, we as officers do not have that sway, but we can obviously ask for it to be done through the appropriate channels.
Thank you, Chair. If this crossing doesn't get approval, I, for one, would not want to put my hand up and approve this application. So what I'm saying to you as planners, can we block this application if we're unable to get the county council to allow us to put that crossing in?
So you'll note that the officer's recommendation on this is purely to defer. And the reason to do that is to allow the conversations to take place, and so that we're in a position that we know the final answer with regards to whether or not the crossing can be progressed. Should the crossing not be able to be progressed, then members will obviously have to consider the application on its merits when it returns to planning committee and make the decision that they feel is appropriate.
Just to clarify that point, the applicant is optimistic that highways will respond. And within 6 weeks, we know that the half-life of highways is more or less measured in years rather than So I'm just wondering whether having a period of 6 months is adequate if highways is not responding. So that if, for instance, all due diligence by the applicant is made to highways and highways goes slow at 20 miles an hour as opposed to 60 miles an hour, that we take that into account if we know that the applicant is serious about contacting the highway.
Completely note what the member is saying. We have to consider what is an appropriate time period, both in the interest of the applicant and also in the interest of obviously making a speedy decision. However, should in 6 months' time we be 80% there and we think there is strong potential for it to go through, we will simply bring back the application as an update report requesting further time. As if the applicant, with luck and a following wind and quite frankly a miracle, get something out of county within 6 weeks, we will again more than happily bring it back to the next available planning committee. We're not committing to a particular decision at a particular point at this moment in time, because we are cognizant of the fact that it's a bit stick your finger in the air and with regards to timings. But I want to reassure members that we've taken I think it's clear we've taken quite a pragmatic approach on this one through the application process, and I think we're committed because of the nature of the type of housing and all of that, but we will continue to take a pragmatic approach and bring it back to members when it is ready. Thank you.
I'm very concerned. I represent Streatham. It's it's in my patch. I know this road very, very well. I've read all the agenda, and for example, I'm sure all members are aware of this, but in a normal housing estate, 89% of people have a car. Where it's affordable housing, it's 45. So about half have a car. And this particular site is likely to generate 44 primary and secondary pupils, and the pupils will go on a bus. Now, even where Councillor Wilson said it was sensible to put that crossing point in the existing Cambridge Road, can you really see little kids coming out of this development who want to buy some sweets or an ice cream at the garage and then running 100 yards down the road to go across the crossing point to run 100 yards back to the garage? I don't see that. I see them running across the road like we tried to do when we last visited the site. And I don't think I'm very uncomfortable with supporting any system that puts 50 or more, and as one member has already talked about it, there's the preschool kids as well, and then there's people who aren't so mobile and that sort of thing in addition to that. I'm very concerned about putting my name to anything that puts children that I have a responsibility for in danger, and I want to be absolutely sure, and I don't know if a planning manager can do it, so unless there is a proper, and I don't know how it can fit in, an island in the middle with lights that the pedestrians press, and that will cost, I should think, 200,000 quid, and the transport people will be against it. I'm in a muddle here, and I would ask members to think very, I don't know what the answer is. Okay, councillor.
As you know, my love of county highways is, I mean, it's non-existent. I do, however, have enormous confidence in the applicant who recognises the hazards that his residents, or potentially his residents, will be facing if this light controlled crossing doesn't go ahead. So I am more confident than I was when we were here last in April. And I think I was one of the people who said that I could not put my name to something where the only way something like this would happen is if half a dozen children were killed. Because seems to be the only response that county highways have, is there has to be an X amount of deaths on a road before they will do anything. Well, I'm not signing up for that either. I'm sure that no children are stupid, or some of them are, but anyway, no children are so stupid that they would attempt to cross that road when there is a perfectly good crossing. 100 yards seems like a long way to me, but then to a small child, it's probably not. If they get into the habit of doing that, I don't think there's an ideal place to have a crossing. I think if we can get county highways to agree to a crossing anywhere, I think we've got to take it, because you know that they will just sit there number crunching at their laptops. They never leave their desks. They've never stood on the side of that road. They've never tried to get across that road. So we've got to provide somewhere. There's no ideal place for this. We've got to provide somewhere for mothers, children, the elderly to get across that road from this very much needed affordable housing site. Anywhere is better than nowhere. So I would ask the planning officer to put into something, I don't know how he would do it, that if the Highways Authority don't play ball on this, then we would ask them to come to this committee and justify why, when the applicant is happy to spend the money, that they are going to go ahead and refuse it, because I think that is unacceptable. They make comments in the report, in the additional report, that I find completely and utterly unacceptable, where they talk about it's too expensive. They're not paying for it. The applicant very kindly is paying for it. So therefore, they have no right. They cannot justify this just because they say it's not going to be safe. Tell that to a mother who's trying to get across the road.
Councillor Huffer,
Sorry.
we're still on questions to officers, actually.
I thought we were in debate.
No, we haven't got into debate yet. So we'll have our obligatory questions for Councillor Trapp.
No, mine was debate.
All right, okay, so we're all happy to go on to. Okay, so we've got.
The only one I'm not sure about is Councillor Weaver. I'm not sure whether hers.
Yes, I'm not sure that. You were waving your arm about, and I don't know. Do you want to be accommodated under debate, or do you want to ask officers a question?
I think I thought we were under debate as well, to be fair.
Okay. Okay, so it's you now.
Right. My thoughts reading the Santec report was that the traffic survey data did not include for any automatic traffic counts. So it didn't actually record how many vehicles were going in both directions. And I think that's a valid point to make, that they don't actually know how many vehicles were going past because they didn't actually count that when they did the report. And also the other comment is on the less people owning cars in affordable housing. Just looking at, I'm not quite sure, it didn't actually say whether it was this local authority that they looked at or
No,
another,
it didn't. It was just-
another local authority. If they looked at a local authority, say in Cambridge or any other built up area where there was affordable housing, the public transport is far greater there than there is in rural areas. And I am concerned that this report has come out where it hasn't clarified exactly what the data was and where it came from.
Okay, I'm going to come up with a suggestion shortly, but in the meantime, councillor Trapp.
Thank you. I'm in favour. I'm delighted the developer is, or the proposer is actually going to go for a traffic system, for a traffic management system. I think it will work. And I think it will also help right-hand turns out of the estate. And so I would like to propose that we defer this. I would like to make a proposition that we defer this as requested.
Okay. We are still on debate and we are still on Akinwale.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got a similar concern to what Councillor Hopper mentioned in regard to the local highways authority and their attitude towards this application. For instance, they mentioned numbers like 4 people during the AM peak and 3 in the PM peak. It just seems unrealistic, as though they just cherry pick those numbers from, as though we're in a scenario where there's no one leaving their houses, and then unless you have to have an urgent errand going out to the house. It does feels as though their numbers are questionable in terms of where they got the evidence from. I also, in an ideal world, because they also mentioned the fact that 150,000 is expensive and we have to justify our reasons. I think the life of a child is really highly justifiable. In my ideal world, I feel they should even reduce the speed on that particular road and introduce speed cameras, strict common measures on that particular road to ensure the safety of every child and young person that crosses that road. So I'm really concerned about the comments from the local highways authority, and I'm happy to support the deferral on the basis that the highways authority listens to what we have to say in regards to the common measures on that particular road. Thank you.
So that's a second from you. And councillor Goodall.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the applicant for the work they've done and to come along and support this crossing. And with them and the report that we independently had, and with this council's this committee's pressure behind them, there is no way highways should refuse to come to us and without putting the arguments against what we request. This request will save lives, without a doubt. The crossing is really, really needed, because it'll be an inevitability that someone will get bowled over on that road, especially at peak time when these kids are going to school. Yeah, and they're not concentrating properly, especially if they're a little late, they'll run out. And I just can't see why anyone who's got half a brain would refuse to put this crossing in.
Yes, I'm going to just throw it up in the air. And I think we seem to be very much a similar point of view. But I was just thinking in the back of my head whether we could agree with the officer's recommendation, but with some condition put on that just strengthens it up a bit to make sure that, you know, the Highways Authority were going to visit here and there was going to be a proper, and they understand that if they don't come up with a proper, not a Mickey Mouse one, crossing, then we will probably turn it down.
Chair, through you, is it possible to add that on as a condition that if the local highways authority, we've got an applicant who wants it, we as a committee want it, if the local highways authority say, not sure, then they need to come back to this committee and justify it, sit in front of us. I know we can't command, but we can put pressure on somebody senior from county highways to turn up here and explain to us why a child's life isn't worth £150,000 or the inconvenience that they're going to have to go through to put this crossing in. They're not having that. The applicant wants it, we want it, the residents will want it. You know, this is extraordinary that they can put in writing that the £150,000
Okay,
is expensive.
I'm going to move on to Councillor Wilson, but I'm also going to ask the officers if they can now think of some words that they could put on where it says recommended to defer, but with some qualification to that.
I think we need to be careful, is honest answer about how we approach this. I think it is perfectly reasonable for members to minute the fact that they expect County Council to work with us on this, and should they not do so, they would like to have a member of the Highways Department here at the next planning committee to explain why they haven't. As I said before, we don't have any power over highways, and I would be, we have to be very careful when we're putting together a deferral as to the wording behind it. And I was going to make sure that members clarified before we had any votes.
Okay, we'll move on before we finish. And in the meantime, we'll go to Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I was thinking perhaps we could ask the local county councillor to please put pressure on the Highways Authority. That might be quite a useful way of doing it.
Unfortunately, I'm not the administration, and my influence with the administration is rather limited.
Or we can ask the administration as well, if you like.
Well, that could go through you.
Yeah, I will put what contacts I have in that direction. But I think the local county councillor putting it forward would be a very useful thing to do. And if I appreciate that our chairman's concern about children running across the road when there is a crossing. I know that, however, he's very good at getting highways to put crossings where they're required, because he managed to get a pedestrian controlled crossing across the A1123, and the highways did agree with that. So I'm sure they are capable of agreeing to these things. And if there was a problem, the roads the pavement areas there are a bit wider, and we could possibly put a fence along the road until you get to the crossings to stop people just rushing out, or perhaps just a little bit of one, just to encourage people to use the proper crossing in the proper way.
I think we're all talking the same language, Councillor Wilson, and I think we just want a proper job and not a Mickey Mouse one. Because I don't know how you can put that in. But we've now got Councillor Trapp.
This was actually a question to the chair, who's where he knows the area very well. How many houses are there in Streatham? Roughly 400,000, 2,000? What? Just under 1,000. Well, this table we have on page 109 shows the proportion of events or crimes in Cambridge Road as opposed to Streatham Ward. And I counted the number of houses on Cambridge Road, and it's about 50. So we're talking about a ratio here, which says there's actually there's quite a bit of crime on Cambridge Road. I don't know what this table actually is meant to do, but it does seem to me that you're talking percentages here. Councillor Whelan, I know, travels that road during the daytime and peak hours, and she may actually say more about what she thinks about the traffic conditions there.
Through the chair, I will, I travel that sort of at least 3 times a week. I come back after 4 o'clock. It's an extremely busy road. I would say that the traffic through there at that time is fairly slow, but it's extremely, extremely busy. the mornings, it is a lot faster. But certainly in the evenings, around after 4 o'clock, it's, you can be queuing from almost, where the Lazy Otter is all the way up to Streatham, traveling. The queues are horrendous, to be honest, up to that roundabout.
All men.
Thank you. What I wanted to ask, just as a point of clarity, before we even consider moving to a vote on any deferral, is to ask the members if you have, in your own views, considered all the other material considerations that are pertinent to this application before we move to a deferral, just so we can be clear that when we are deferring it, that we are deferring it purely on the highways matters and to reach an agreement on that. So just in case there's any further debate which you wish to make in those areas, thank you.
We're deferring on highways matters, but we are reserving that we will discuss the whole application again.
Officers would advise it's probably best to discuss the merits today, because if you have an in-principle objection to the application, why are we encouraging the applicant to then go away and have discussions which, quite frankly, would be fruitless?
Chair.
Councillor Lay.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but the fundamental principle of not having a crossing there kills the whole scheme. If we can't have the crossing, we can't have the scheme. Now, that's my view. If you can't get that crossing in to get people safely across that road, it kills the whole scheme. So it would need to come back in front of us with the option of killing the whole scheme if we couldn't have a crossing put in to safeguard the children.
Councillor, I can confirm that's exactly the intent of the deferral. It's to bring it back in front of members once we are at a position to clarify the highways matters. What I'm asking members' consideration on is around the other matters. Thank you.
You, Chair, I also think that we agreed the outline. Detailed planning will come back to us, will it, for the detail?
Absolutely, yeah. So all we have in front of us is an outline.
Like because I was subbing on in the April meeting, I think we all approved of the scheme in essence. The only thing that troubled, I think, everybody was crossing that road.
Yeah.
So I think that the principle of the scheme, bingo, yes to affordable housing, yes to the mix, yes to the play area, as long as it's right in the right area and it's well designed. But the only thing that gave everybody pause was crossing that road to get to school, to get to the shops, to get to the doctors, to get to the recreation ground. That was the thing that nobody was comfortable with saying yes to this application. Everything else was fine in principle, but if the details coming back to us in layout and design and where the playground's going to be and that sort of thing, then we will have a chance to have a look at it in the round.
We do need to.
The principle of it was fine.
We do need to add something to just where it says, we're recommending you defer the application. That's just one word. We want to somehow get in there that this how critical a full-blown light control crossing is.
I think the minutes of this meeting will absolutely cover that. And as officers, we are obviously well aware of committee's intentions in this regard, and we will be pushing.
So we can, if we can put it to the vote to defer, subject to there being an agreed form of quality crossing or something. I don't know.
Well, all we're saying at the moment, Chair, is that we're asking for it to be deferred to allow for the further works to take place. We're not saying that the crossing in itself is acceptable. What we're saying is we're deferring it purely to allow for exploration around coming to an acceptable highway solution.
But when it comes back, we would have the option of rejecting the whole application if there was no crossing there.
Yes. So what I'm asking, just to clarify what I'm saying here, is I'm asking members to say, first of all, effectively, is highways your one remaining hurdle? Because that's why I'm saying we need to have that conversation in the round. Because if you're okay with quantum, you're okay with access, because obviously that's what the outline is there for. But clearly, we're not there yet with regards to highways, and what we'll be doing is we'll be deferring to allow for it to be brought back for members to consider the highway scheme once that is properly formulated and once it's gone through the process.
And the
of
whole
council.
application, of course.
Well, as I'm trying to say now is if there is an in-principle objection to the application, i.e. you're not happy with the quantum, you're not happy with the layout, that really, in my view, in fairness to the applicant, needs to be talked through today and voted upon. Because as I said, if they then go through, jump all the hurdles, get the highways approval, and then you turn around and refuse it, quite frankly, my view would be is if it went to
But you
appealing
said
costs.
earlier, a few minutes ago, that we would have the opportunity to look at a new app or a revised application.
Yes, what I said was, we would be, when we brought it back to committee, we will be looking at it to see if it had overcome those highways objections that you had.
And our objections.
Well, what I'm saying
Our
to you,
concerns.
what I'm saying to you is if you have other objections, that is something I strongly urge the committee to debate today, because if those cannot be overcome, then there is no point bringing it back further down the line, because overcoming the highways objections aren't going to overcome the problems.
Councillor Trapp.
It seems to me that in principle, it is an outline planning application. So in principle, we are agreeing, or we seem to be agreeing, to have a development there of affordable housing of about up to 83 affordable homes. And the only condition at the moment, the only stalling block is actually the provision of a suitable crossing point.
Yeah.
We're still going to have the detailed design coming back later with reserve matters, with the play area, with the actual outline, with the roads and everything else. All we're looking at is access and the principle at the moment.
And so we must want to have it reserve matters to come back to this committee.
Yes.
Yep, we're more than happy to bring reserve matters back to this committee as appropriate.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of just saying reserve matters, and that means on the ground that if it isn't a satisfactory safe crossing, then it won't go ahead, or it's unlikely to get approval.
That's for members to consider when we get the appropriate scheme in front of ourselves.
Yeah.
Sorry to be.
And the applicant, I'm sure, has heard this conversation. Okay, well, I think unless anybody wants to have a question to an officer or a discussion about something, we'll go to a vote. So those in favour of the vote as we've just discussed. Okay. Thank you very much, members. I generally believe that it's a very good thing to have a debate like that, and I believe it's the right thing for us to do. Eight.
Thank you, Chair. In the usual fashion, I will draw members' attention to the planning performance figures on page 183 of the report, and ask that members note the performance. And if you have any questions around that, please let me know and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you. Just a further aside to that, members will be aware that they have been invited to a planning seminar next week where we will be talking through some of these sort of things that are going on in the planning world and also performance and things like that. So again, if there's any questions around the negotiation protocol, which I've passed to yourselves today for your considerations, you'll have found a natty blue leaflet on your desk. Please either drop me an email ahead of a meeting or feel free to ask me in the evening. I'll be more than happy to walk members through it and answer any questions or concerns you may have. Thank you very much.
Any questions for the planning manager?
Can I say something?
Of course you can.
It's in terms of the presentation. It was difficult sometimes to read the very small print when it came up there. Not in your application, not sorry, but when I think it was when.
Are we
Jeff-
referring to the extract from the policy, which
Yeah, yes,
which I
exactly, yeah.
admit, even I'm sitting about 4 yards away from it and I was struggling
Yeah.
to read it. We will have a look at what we can do on that.
You could maybe just abstract those relevant things, because when I was doing lectures, I would always go to the back of the lecture theatre and check that it was visible from there. Yeah.
I fully take that on board and I'll feed that back to the team
Thank you very
when we
much.
have our debrief tomorrow. Thank you.
Well, if everybody's finished, thank you very much for attending. Another memorable meeting. And Councillor Trent, how do you, have you anything to say or? Okay. Right. The meeting's now closed.